Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Chris Hurd, small business lender out of Orlando, Florida. Ground zero for the election. Chris, welcome. I know you're busy processing all those PPP forgiveness applications, and we're going to talk about 2021. Lance out of Arkansas, thank you very much for joining us, Lance. And, of course, Katie, undisclosed location in Washington State. Katie, are you getting acclimated now?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. We've had a couple of now where the sun didn't show it all.
So you got snow yet? Seattle gets snow, right?
We haven't gotten snow yet, but we're supposed to maybe get some later this week. We're down below freezing this week. So.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Just when everyone's fleeing California, they go, well, maybe the weather is okay. Of course we do. Hey, we got a bunch of stuff. Let's get to it. Lance, what are you doing tomorrow?
We're going to talk about what happens when an SBA loan becomes delinquent and things that you as a good, prudent SBA lender and servicer, Bob, a good SBA citizen, the things you're going to do to take care of that SBA loan. And, you know, we all make SBA loans with the reliance that the SBA guarantee is there. We're going to help you understand what to do when a loan becomes past due and how to get the guarantee paid.
And you're going to talk about all the deferral options. You're going to talk about PPP. It's jam-packed, and Lance this is in his wheelhouse. This is Lance lives
my
for
favorite
this.
part.
There you go.
I don't want to tell you, Bob, I'm excited that there are going to be more loans in liquidation in the future, but it is my favorite part of SBA lending.
Well, you're the Grinch that's coming out for Christmas. They're great. No, it's important stuff. Hey, we love your questions. We have a number of questions we're going to be answering. Send them to myself or Joseph. There's your certificate. Let's go to the poll questions. And has your credit box tightened for any of the following industries? And you can vote for more than one. Correct, Joseph?
Yeah, correct. You can answer multiple answers.
I think there's several of these categories, Bob, that are going to get a high-level response.
Yeah, that's one. Wow. What do you think, Chris?
I'm a little surprised that, construction, I don't know, I guess we're saying construction industry and healthcare industry. Right. Those are the two lowest. I'm not surprised with the rest of them. Frankly, I'm a little shocked that all these aren't over 60, 70% at this point.
Yeah. But I know construction is hot right now. People are sequestering in place, and they go, oh, we need to have those wires fixed or this painted or whatever. So home improvement's doing well.
Home improvement is doing well, yes.
And, of course, healthcare, we read interesting stuff on that. So when we say your credit box is tightened, Chris, how do you implement that from the C-suite down to your people?
Well, I think it starts with the credit policy itself, and you've got to take a look at what your minimums are, whether it's debt service coverage ratios or FICO scores or, liquidity measurements, net worth measurements, different things like that. Some industries you may, as an institution, might want to preclude from your approved list entirely. I mean, I think that can be a bit radical, but I know that's occurring in institutions all over the country. So I'm not surprised at this high marks with hospitality and restaurants. Obviously, those have both been impacted tremendously, just like gyms. So, what do lenders do? They manage risk. And right now it's a little more risky than it has been for some time in those three categories. Although I will tell you, sometimes, particularly as a hospitality, it may not be a bad thing to be lending in hospitality because these things tend to take 15 to 18 to 24 months to go through construction before you get to the other side.
Well, I was going to ask you that. What is your appetite for ground-up construction and hospitality, Chris?
We're doing some. We have a number of projects that are still in the works right now that we're in various stages of construction. And principally, my philosophy is, you don't want to have a half-built building, number one. So you got to finish it. And number two, I think it's going to be very advantageous in the latter half of 21, early 22 to have the newest hotel in an area which, assuming the feasibility study supports it, I think it'll be very beneficial for those hoteliers. But if you're starting right now to go get construction financing on a hotel, yeah, it's going to be a little tough, to say the least.
Let's talk about 2021 and up Lance's expertise. Have you factored in the expiration of SBA payments deferrals and your loan portfolio performance for next year?
Well, we're talking about expiration of the SBA CARES Act payment.
Right.
Certainly will impact the portfolio to some extent. There are a lot of borrowers who will be just fine. A lot of categories of NAICS codes that will be just fine. Some will come out of the CARES Act payments and probably struggle immediately, but there is going to be some liquidation activity in 2021 for sure.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. About half the audience say, yeah, we're factoring that in. Chris, we had Bill Phelan, the president of Paid It On, and he's there's a huge difference between delinquencies. He's talking up to 10% versus 3 to 5%. I mean, 10% is an astronomical, gut-wrenching number.
It is. And, just because the CARES Act, it expired October 1 for loans that had been, for SBA loans that had been booked prior to April 1. If you were an active lender from April 1 through October 1st, or through the end of September, I should say, you'll have a bit of a declining period here where you'll still be covered for some CARES Act payments into 21. Yeah. But there is a new proposal in the Senate that's suggesting that they want to give 12 months of P&I payments again. So we'll see where it goes. There's a lot of proposals out there. I don't think anything's going to move until at least Wednesday of next week, maybe late next week.
I think we're all on board with that. Both comments, Chris. A, something will happen, and B, it's going to be the election. Yep. This came up yesterday, and we know we're doing well under 50,000, and there were a couple at 100,000. But have you had any apps approved over 150? 11%, a little bit higher than I thought.
Yeah, it is a little bit higher than I thought.
Lance, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, of course, the big rush right now is on the 3508S, the loans 50 and under. I think that, some of the statistical information indicates the majority of those people over 150, they're putting their information together, but they've got time with when the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act passed. They didn't all have to rush and submit their forgiveness immediately. And the other thing it factors in is there are some accounting firms that are telling their PPP borrowers do not submit for forgiveness until 2021. I've heard that in a number of places.
And I think, Lance, that's also your recommendation, correct?
I think it's something to think about. If there was simplified forgiveness well, if there's simplified forgiveness on loans of 150 and under, I probably would just get it out of the way. But I think if you're in a state that might potentially tax the PPP forgiveness, one way to punt is to wait until 2021.
Yep, that's right.
Chris, we're talking about budget for next year. These are 4 factors that we have in there. We haven't talked about this much, but any state that you like versus states you don't like, yeah, we're gonna
put me on the spot.
Upset 1/50th of your referral base here, Chris, real fast.
Well, I'll just say it this way. I mean, there are some states that have had more than a disproportionate share of shutdowns, obviously. California, New York, New Jersey come to mind, Illinois probably. All those states happen to also be high taxation states. To Lance's point, he just was saying those are all states, I believe, that the state legislators are looking or salivating perhaps at PPP borrowers to think that they might see some additional tax revenue. I wonder how the economy is going to come back in those states, because they've dug themselves a bit of a hole, not just in shutting down, but also in these threats of taxation, which was happening prior to the pandemic, frankly. I mean, there's plenty of those folks that that are coming down here to Florida or over to Texas or, Nevada, Arizona, et cetera. I think I don't know that I would necessarily outright say no to a borrower from those states, and we certainly aren't, particularly because California is the largest SBA market in the country. But it does give you a moment to pause in terms of how is the business market, the business climate going to be.
Obviously being a resident in California, when you look at the world economy, we're number 6 or 7, so
Right.
we're chugging along pretty well.
I guess I'd say, Bob, if you had a marginal deal and you had to pick between two deals, and one is in a low taxation state that's got relatively low case numbers, they've opened back up again, you're probably going to lean in that direction versus one of the states that I just mentioned, where it's there's a lot more suffering going on for a lot of reasons.
Well, and I think Chris brings up an excellent point. There are states, Arkansas is one. When you look at the state of Arkansas, there's plenty of COVID in Arkansas, but it's open. Restaurants are open at limited capacity. But if you walk through a community here, not just Arkansas, several Midwest states, aside from people wearing masks, business is happening fairly normally. About the only difference that I noticed in the community where I'm broadcasting from, Bob, is restaurants are operating at 50% of capacity, but they've got people dining in. Most other businesses, the only change you would notice, Bob, is the customers and the employees are wearing masks. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say that these states are immune from the impact, but comparing to a New York or a California where things have been shut down and the economy's really suffering, I'd say some of the smaller Midwestern states probably are doing a little bit better right now.
I guess my comment on this whole thing is know your geographic footprint, understand our job is to mitigate risk. There's nothing wrong with lending to California and New Jersey and Illinois. Just understand the risk and factor that in. I mean, that's... let's see. Katie, you're awfully quiet. What you talk about today? Katie and her stats.
Yeah, well, I think the stats are interesting, and I think it gives us an idea of what's going on, especially right now with forgiveness. Everybody's kind of asking what's going on with these applications. And unfortunately, SBA isn't publishing their own data, but a fintech called Numerated, who offers tools to lenders for processing PPP forgiveness as well as other small business loans, has been kind of collecting some of their data, and they have some of the most complete data right now. So it's interesting on that case. Like earlier, we were discussing the number of forgiveness apps that have been approved for over 150,000, and that number, I mean, we had 11% on the show, but that's not, at least of the approvals that we've seen so far, that's less than 1% of what they've seen, at least in their data.
Katie, where did they come up with this number? As of 1 week ago, a full 96% of loans, PPP loans submitted, have been acted upon by SBA. How do they track that? Is that from their own portfolio? Is that a guess? I mean, that's an awfully high number.
The way they're able to do this is they have, because of the way their tools work, when a lender is using them, they break it into 3 categories. So there's the point where a borrower has touched their forgiveness app, but they haven't submitted it to their lender. Then there's the portion where the lender has it, they're looking over it, and then there's the portion where SBA has it. So they've broken those into those sections, and it's based on just the pure amount of data that they've received as far as the number of loans that they've seen. So of course it's going to be limited to what they've seen and not the full SBA number. But they've done over 250,000 PPP forgiveness apps as of 2 weeks ago. So they've got the closest number we can use.
Sampling. Hopefully their data is better than some.
Chris, this is a question for you, or maybe Lance also, or Katie. Anybody can answer it. Jim asked the question. He's confused. We have interest and fees on these loans. Can we deduct that interest payment? In the IRS notice only seems to address the PPP forgiveness. So I guess what I'm saying is that we have a PPP forgiveness. Can we deduct the payroll that those funds covered? And can we deduct the interest, the implied interest on those PPP loans?
I think the second question is easier, which is that the interest is accruing on these PPP loans, and that's being paid by the governments. I don't think that's something that the borrowers can deduct. What was the other piece of that question?
Can we still deduct the payroll that we got the PPP funds for?
Well,
tax?
the answer at the moment is you're supposed to be able to. We've talked about this on the show before, but that is a point of contention between the IRS and SBA, and will probably have to get
In the States.
and the states will probably have to be mediated by Congress. So
Yeah.
I think the intent of Congress was yes. And as I've said before here, there's no difference between getting a equity injection, a grant, let's call it, from Uncle Sam versus your neighbor. I think that's a very apropos analogy here. Yet in one case, no problem, you can definitely expense these things. In the other case, IRS is saying, well, we don't think that's quite right. And I think it's more.
More to
Yeah.
come.
That's right. More to come. And as Lance said, hey, maybe punt to 2021 before you submit your forgiveness, because a lot's going to change.
Yeah, we wish we
And
had better
Chris
news.
is,
But
I'm sorry, Bob.
Go ahead, Lance.
I'm sorry, Bob. Chris is exactly right. That's another reason to consider waiting until 2021, because the intent of the CARES Act was for you to be able to write the payroll off and get forgiveness. But somebody at the IRS has said, wait a minute. So we may have to have Congress intervene.
Interesting question or observation from Russ. Is that up next, Joseph? And I'm going to let Lance handle this one.
The question was about when you have a business acquisition loan where the business being purchased has a PPP loan, and you establish an escrow account because they haven't gotten PPP forgiveness yet. You establish an escrow account in that amount. What kind of escrow fees can be charged on that escrow account? And there's not a hard and fast rule, but if you go to the 50-10-6, it's going to fall to prudent lending standards. What kind of escrow fee would you charge on a similar size non-SBA loan? That should be an acceptable escrow fee amount for this SBA loan.
Lance, you gave a great answer to a question that is not on the screen.
It was on the previous slide, Bob.
You're right.
On the previous.
I tell you, we're going to hold this over for Russ so he makes some comments, throws around big words such as gibberish. So we'll sort that out and we'll talk about that tomorrow, Russell. Yeah,
Fills the whole screen with the question as well.
Yeah, and I yelled at Joseph. Joseph, we're too old to read that.
Gotta chop these down. Yeah.
Real quick. Can't do that one cold. Real quick, let's see, when you're doing your 2021 budgets, be sure and refer to our compensation reports. Katie, how many pages did we do on that report? 40-something pages?
Yeah, it's quite a few. I think you're about right there.
And we break that up. You can buy the entire bundle, or you can buy individual categories. BDO obviously is a hot topic, and just get a hold of Joseph or send me an email, and we'll get that information to you. It's also on our website. Chris, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Glad. Let's see. Next time we talk is going to be interesting in terms of news. Oh, by the way, part of our editorial philosophy is we cover stuff that you don't get in regular media or Wall Street Journal. There's a great article everyone needs to read today about rental forgiveness, rental evictions, and how that impacts your portfolio. I didn't address that again. We don't really focus on that. We'll talk about commercial real estate, but that's a great article. Lance, thank you very much. Katie, thank you. And thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street. one entrepreneur at a time. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great afternoon.